Hey everybody, it's Ricky from All Sorts of Words, and I have so many words tonight, words of affirmation. I have an idea that tonight we're going to answer all the questions related to comic book nonsense. All of them, you ask? Yes, all of them. None stones unturned. But I can't do it all on my own. I'm only so much of a genius, so I had to invite on other geniuses to help me come up with the best answers. So here's a genius right now. It's Mr.
Mhm.
Aiken. Hey,
Hello.
Mr. Aiken. How are you, genius?
I'm good. How are you, genius?
I'm great. Okay, so I wanted to do this ironically, unironically, and just kind of let's just answer the questions, the deep dish. And in the
Okay.
end, if we come to an agreement, great. If we don't, we'll still come up with an answer.
All right.
Okay. So first question, and these are from Dan at Dan's X-Men Comics, a fantastic friend of ours, friend of the channel, personal
That
friend.
that needs his own channel.
Yo, Dan, get a camera. He's gonna have like 100 subs on day one if you just get.
Exactly.
I'm saying. Okay, so first question that we are going to definitively answer. First question,
Definitively. I love that word.
definitively. UK price variance, Mark Jeweler discounts, premiums. Do you care? Do they matter?
To me, and that's the only way I can answer these is does it matter to me? A UK variant really doesn't matter to me. Mark Jewelers doesn't matter to me, but I can see how what collectors are doing is they want something that they own that's special. And so if you've got a Iron Man 150 and you've got one that's a Mark Jewelers, that's a little bit more special than the ones that don't have the Mark Jewelers. So I could see how collectors are really going for those things. That part doesn't, matter to me. The UK price variant doesn't matter to me. It's funny what does matter to me. And for some reason, newsstands matter more to me. And here's the reason why. If I've got two choices there in this newsstand, and it's only a little bit more than a direct version, I'm going to pick up the newsstand over the direct version. And the reason why is that's the way it looked when I picked it up as a kid off the rack. There were no direct markets. And so when I've looked at some things and I've bought some things, I have picked a newsstand, and it may have been a $10, $20 more than the direct version, only because I like the way it looked. And it's all about aesthetics. It's not that it's rare, because a lot of times the reason it's more expensive is that people were flipping through them. And of course, you're going to have those creases and all those things, but that's not the reason I'm looking at it. I'm looking at it as, ooh, this is something I could have picked up when I was a kid, as opposed to the direct version.
Okay. Okay.
Was that definitive enough for you?
See, you're only speaking for you, though. I'm going to speak for all of America.
Okay, do that.
Yeah, literally every American I'm going to speak for right now. I think in geeky collecting, anything that makes your thing more special is somehow a differentiator from every other thing. Like I was talking to a friend the other day. There are apparently literally, I don't know the exact number, but 9,000 copies of Hulk 181 on the CGC census.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're in 9,000, there's a percentage that are at, above an 8. There's a percentage that then are now above a 9, and a percentage in a 9.5 and higher, and so on and so forth. And so having that additional differentiator matters to the elite of the elite. If once you've hit quality, like if you're at a 9.8 in something, like the only thing left to do is find a Mark Jewelers. There's also that historical aspect to a Mark Jewelers, and the fact that they were just sold on military bases, right?
They were sold around military bases. And that's the thing I see, because I live near a military base. I've noticed that I've gone back and looked at a lot of mine, and a lot of mine have Mark Jewelers in them. And I never realized it when I was looking through it, when I was reading them, that would be something special. I thought it was just something that, they were everywhere and they only got put in certain ones. If that's the case, our UK price variants, aren't they rarer than a US cent version of the same comment? I think you're muted, Ricky. I can't hear you.
Sorry, my bad. I would say yes, that they are rarer because think about the market. Like, okay, so they're being sold near military bases. I know bags and boards at my local comic book stores in my area was relatively uncommon. Bags and boards were for special, super special comics.
Right.
And so like you send a box and they're being read by a soldier in his bunk. And then what does he do with it? Does he put it in his bag and board to make sure that they're alternating faces in his box that he brought?
Mhm.
No, he's gonna, hey Jim, you got to read this. You know what I mean? Hey Marcy, take a look at what Wolverine's up to this week, and so on and so forth. So like I can imagine just by a natural attrition that they get worn down. Do they matter? I mean, historically, everything matters. Historically, every single thing matters. But I guess you're right. Does it matter to you? Do you really care? I bet so there's a thing in Marvel card collecting, right?
Mhm.
Where they do like a set collection. So there's the Spider-Man regular. Then there's the Spider-Man Precious Metal Gem green, and then orange, and then red, and then there's the holo, all of the same card, literally the same card. So I can't imagine, and I'd love to meet someone out there who's such an avid, crazy collector of certain issues that they have this is the Hulk 181. This is the Hulk 181 Mark Jewelers variant. This is the Hulk 181 signed copy. I got Stan Lee to sign it, so on and so forth. So I guess the answer is those things only matter if they matter to you, and then you're the buyer. So I would say don't let someone try to use one of those things as like a leverage to get you to pay more. Like, dude, this book is $450 any day of the week, but why are you charging $6? Well, it's Mark Jewelers. Yeah, but I don't care. And try to negotiate from there, I suppose. But yeah, I guess that is the answer. I think you nailed it. You spoke for all of America.
Well, and that's the thing with the UK price variants. Aren't they rare, but aren't they cheaper?
Okay, so here's the deal. This is what I understand to be true of UK price variants. UK price variants were made along with every other Marvel book in the same Marvel factory, and then they just took a chunk of them and allocated them to be sent overseas. They were printed at the exact same time. It's kind of like that old joke about like, this is the premium beer, this is the and then it's the same pike. They made the books and then they just stamped them with that Pence variant and then shipped them overseas. They were printed at the exact same time. They were released at the exact same time. Provide after transport and all that. But they are the same books. They're not like an extra run they did after, they're successful in the United States, let's send them over to the UK. So they are originals.
But there's not as many printed for the
they didn't send over as many over there as so I mean arguably they'd be rarer, and I actually think that's pretty great.
Right. So, but aren't they more difficult to sell, like on eBay and things?
So they command, on average, the UK price variants command about a 10% less. So, for example, if you've got an X-Men 1 in a 4.0 and it's going for $10,000, the UK price variant will, on average, sell for about $9,000.
Okay. And see, that just goes against the whole rarity aspect of the thing. Like you're saying with a Mark, I've got a Mark Jewelers. Then it should be, I've got a Pence variant of this, which there's only, this many in existence. That seems like that would be a rarer copy of that and command more value. Basic economics, it would command more value than ones that, don't have the price variant. But again, I think somebody said the market's deciding that those people don't want it. That person said, I couldn't stand looking at that Pence over there in the corner and I had to get rid of it and get me one that had a cent, sort of like me with, I can get a newsstand because I like the way it looks, not because of any rarity or scarcity aspect of it. Just the fact that I like the way it looks or don't like the way it looks. Okay.
Interesting. Well, Okay. So that's as good as an answer we're going to get. Does it matter to you?
Does it matter to you?
Question number 2. Yeah, this stupid thing. There we
On
go.
your godly grail.
How to cope that you'll never get your own godly grail. And what I mean godly grail.
Now, wait a minute. Is that exactly the way he worded it?
No, I think how to cope with the idea that we'll never own our ideal collection, or what if we do achieve our desired collection, will we be satisfied? So I abbreviated it. So what is your you just won the $250 million Powerball, and your first purchase is identified as the one that means the most to you in terms of comics. What are you buying? It's obviously going to be high grade, but what are you buying?
Well, that's the thing now. Now I've been thinking about that a lot, because I think you talked about that before. You kind of posed that question. You've had this much money, you had this much money, you had this much money. And a lot of people at this point in time are starting to go, well, what are my 2024 goals? What do I want to get in 2024? And so I started to think about that. And I'm like, what do I really want? What, do I want a, 8.0 of Hulk 181, or would I rather have a full run of, the Avengers so I could read? And I think that seems to be my goals now, is more lower key issues, meaning I want to finish my run of Iron Man. And you're like, well, why do you want to finish that run of Iron Man? That's because I want to start at issue 1 and read to issue 335. I want the full effect. And other people will say, and this goes back to something else. Well, then the person is saying, well, why don't you just read that stuff online? Why do you have to have the physical copies of those things to actually read? And I go back to the same old tried and true argument of, me and my wife, we can make a really great batch of crawfish etouffee. It's not the same thing as going to the gumbo shop over in New Orleans and getting a batch of crawfish etouffee. I can watch Penn State play college football on TV, or I could go to the whiteout game. I think Stan Lee said the same thing. You can look at boobs on a screen, but it's different than having them in your hand.
Okay.
And it's
Sure.
that it's the traditionalist in me wanting the traditional. I want that book that maybe somebody else had, that you picked it up off the stand. It has that smell. It has those ads. It's the full force experience of actually reading that comic in its natural state, the way it needed to be or should be read. But that's me, because I'm a traditionalist. I like tradition. And so that's the reason I want the full run of Iron Man. The other goal I have here recently, I've got a trope that I use on a lot of people's, when I make comments, they'll do a video. And if they at any point in time mention John Byrne, I'm going to put, did someone say John Byrne? And now I've done that so much that people, when somebody, and they know me, like any of the other YouTubers that I constantly put that in their comments, when they pick up a comic book and it's a John Byrne comic book, guess who they're going to be thinking of? They're going to be thinking of, well, Mr. Akins. I've decided to try to collect all the works that John Byrne has ever done. His whole, and there you go to Byrne's Robotics. He's got a website, and there's a checklist. Here's all the stuff John Byrne does. So really, for me, if I had a bunch of money, that's what I'm going for at this moment in time. I'm going to finish my Iron Man run. I'm going to collect all the stuff John Byrne did. That's me. A collector, I'm a reader first and a collector second. And they're like, why do you collect? The exact reason I want to go back and read some of those things that I had. That's the reason I put it in a sleeve, really, in the board, is and organize it so that later on I can go back and read. And that's kind of what I've been doing the past couple of days. I've had a lot of time to read, and I've read a lot of comics in these past couple of days. And I've gone back and go, you know what? I'm going to start at this point, and I'm going to read my entire collection. April 1976. What are all the comics I have in 1976? And I'm reading all those in 1976, and we're going to move up to 1977. What do I have in the collection? Are there any holes I want to fill in this? And am I capable of filling those holes in those? So with all that money, that's what I would do. I would fill holes as I wanted to read those things. Now, what's a collector going to do? Hey, I got an infinite amount of money. They're probably going to look at it as like, hey, I can buy this because of historical significance. It's can I get a 9.0, a Fantastic Four #1? I've got enough money to get that. Will they get that, or will they chunk it? I think you've asked that question before. Will they start chunking their money and go, ooh, I can go down to a 4.0, and then I can also get an X-Men #1, and I can get a Hulk #1, and an Amazing Fantasy, 15. So for me right now, my collection goals, and if I had a bunch of money, are kind of low. And it's more about, what do I want to read? What do I want to get physical in my hand and actually read?
Okay, so I'm gonna take the question in a very different direction. I love Superman. I love him. I'm never gonna be able to afford an Action Comics #1, because even if I could afford an Action Comics #1 at its current value, and let me show you really quick. I'm still learning how to operate this thing, so everybody stop.
And how do you cope with, if you got an Action #1? I think what you're going to do is you're going to go to the next goal. You're just going to set another goal.
Well, here, let me get this thought out. So, okay, Action Comics #1. If I even could afford $2.5 million, even if I could afford it, at that point, what's the chase? It's swiping a credit card. There's no story to it. There's no emotional connection. So here's how I cope with the fact that I'm not going to own an Action Comic #1. Action Comics #1 is not the first appearance of Superman. This is my cope. If you go to a comic book store right now in the United States and pick up an issue of Superman that just came out, this is not that Superman. It isn't. Superman was hard rebooted in the 80s with Crisis on Infinite Earths, which established that Superman is the Golden Age Superman. It's a totally different dude, to the point where that Clark Kent even was killed by Superboy Prime, a totally different Superman in a different reality. And then our Clark Kent is the Clark Kent that came out of, what do you know, the John Byrne run of the Superman Man of Steel series. So that's my cope. The fact that I'll never be able to own the first appearance of a guy called Superman doesn't mean I can't own the first appearance of Superman.
The Superman that you know and love.
The Superman so first of all, I grew up reading, like, I started reading DC at the death of Superman, which is not the Golden Age Superman. That is not the same dude. So I started reading, the first Superman I ever had was the John Byrne Superman. I'm sure if you say Green Lantern, your image of Green Lantern in your head, who you love, is a completely different character than anyone who grew up with him. If you're 70 years old and I say Green Lantern, you're thinking Alan Scott. If you're 25 years old and I say Green Lantern, you might think Simon Baz. You might be thinking Kyle Rayner. Kyle Rayner's who I grew up with. So that's how I cope. Really quick. I want to get him on here. Travis has just joined the fight.
Hey guys.
Hello.
So we're diving right in. We're answering questions for all of America. There's a lot hanging on this. So first of all, what is your mega ultra millionaire comic grail? Obviously it's going to be high grade. What is it? And then how do you cope with the fact that you will never get as close as you're dreaming?
Ooh.
You broke him.
I did. You
did. You broke me because I've never been that's the problem, right? So for me, I don't look at I can't look at a comic book like a Grail until I actually desire to have that book, it's not really even something on my mind. So, I mean, are you guys hearing me? We're okay?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, good.
He muted himself because he was
Oh,
yelling at his
okay.
children.
Oh, okay.
He's hollering at him. You can tell because his
Nice.
face goes neutral. That's when he's screaming at his kids.
Yeah, that's good. Good to know. Um, so, I mean, for me, so of course, there's the X-Men #1 or the giant size X-Men #1. Really are the ones that pop into my head right away of books that I'd love to have. Batman #1, I, and
Putting
well,
him on the
there's
bomb.
oh, okay. Was wondering if I was like, maybe I was thinking of a wrong
Nope.
comic book. Maybe I need to go down the road of Japanese manga and think of Hello Kitty and think of all those other things. Anyway, no, so for me, I think of that. I guess my Grail book would be Giant Size X-Men #1, and I know that's not a huge book. I mean, it's pretty big, but I'm not.
Big book.
I mean, it's like I never think that I can ever obtain those books, right? I was shocked that I was able to get that Conan #1, and I know it's not a big book, but I don't think about big books all the time. But the one I got isn't. I mean, I guess it was only a 5.0, so but I got it for a great price, so it was really hard. It's like I feel like that became attainable in that moment, right? Because I was standing I was in the comic shop, I was putting away new comics, slipping comics into new bags, and I'm looking down and I'm just looking at the case. He's got so many big books. It's hard to even think about which one I'd want, right? So here it is. It's sitting there. It's a raw copy, so I know it's something I'd want because in my personal collection, I don't really see myself keeping. And I've said this before. I don't really see myself keeping graded books for myself. I mean, I have one graded book right here behind me, right? Whichever way to point, I don't know. And that one I just got, right? So and it's it's probably not going to be something I keep, but it is a signed Chuck Dixon #1 of Alpha Core, right? And so it's cool, but it just came out. So I probably will sell it eventually. But for me, graded books are something I would sell. So when I think of a Grail, I think of something that I want to have in my collection, and those are usually going to be raw books. And so it's really hard for me to define that because I never really think of myself as someone who's going to get that book, right? So for me, a Grail is not something I'm going to have. It's just something that I want in that moment when it's the right price at the right time.
So your cope is kind of like straight up denial. Like it's just not going to happen. And if it does, you're pleasantly surprised. But
exactly.
The rest of your reality is a dark storm cloud of just nothing. I get it. I can.
Yeah, I feed it with a bunch of new comics, basically, right? So,
okay, well, okay, so definitively answered. You hear that, America? Question number 3. This is a spicy one because you just kind of got really close to it a second ago. Is there a threshold where you should sell your collection? I have an answer. I think it's if there's an emergency that requires you to have the money, I don't think you should hang on to any collectible. Like if your wife needs a leg or your child needs a face, horrible ape mauling accident, and it's only through the decimation of your collection that you can save them from all the stares of people at the bus station, then I think yes. And in certain situations like that are emergencies, you should. I think if you're trading a collectible for a collectible, that can get dicey because you got to ask yourself the big questions as to, are you moving into something that you're going to love for the next decade? Like I sold my Magic cards because I keep telling myself I had all my Magic cards, all of them, even the rares, everything in a enormous construction worker duffel bag. And I would be able to pull them out and be like, oh, I'm going to my friend's house. I can bring it and I can bring all of it. I got my rares, got my decks, got my everything. And I sold all of it. And so it's easy for me to imagine that bag is still in my closet. And if it was still there, who could I play with? And the answer has been like nobody. Like nobody plays anymore. I'm not going to be the 38-year-old man kicking the shit out of some 12-year-old who spends more money. I spend more money in a month than he does in his entire life on cards. It's not, I don't want to do that. So it was easy to move into comics, but yeah, I think in emergency situations, is anyone going to even argue with that?
No. And you know why? I've done it.
Oh shit. Okay.
I've done it 3 times.
Wow. Like full liquidation, everything.
Wow. One time I got 10 grand for everything. It was a really good time. One time it was a bunch of but it was all for the right things. Like, it's like, oh, hey, you know what? One year we were just, the job I was working at was not, I hadn't had a raise in 3 years, and it was a tech gig, and things were really tight. We had our second child, our first child needed school clothes stuff, and we were just like, it was like, you know what? There is no reason for me to hold on to this when I can sell it, and it's enough money for us to pay off some bills, pay off some debt, take care of our kids' clothes and needs, and do what we need for it. And yeah, so totally. I agree 100%.
Okay, so Aiken's silence. He that means he's screaming at his children, which means there's nothing he would sell his comics for.
Oh yeah, I'd sell them. I just never had to do that. I've never been in that position to have to sell them. Now I've gotten rid of other stuff. I used to collect action figures. I sold all those action figures. I think me and my wife went through a period where we were really downsizing everything. We came to this realization that if it's in a box, what good is it? If it's not displayed, if we haven't used it within a year, then we need to get rid of it. And that's what we did. We got rid of so much stuff. And I had action figures, I had cards, I had all kinds of things that, once people realize that you collect comics, they're going to give you those kind of things like, collector cards and just little action figures and little things. And I just liquidated all that stuff except comics. I said, this is the one thing I'm going to keep. I'm going to keep these comics. And
I think you just had an unintentional endorsement for cremation when you said, if it's in a box, it doesn't matter. Just get rid of it.
Yeah, if it hadn't, but I mean, that's the thing with the Christmas decorations, the Halloween decorations, those things come out a year. So it's okay to have those in a box because they're going to come back out and we're going to get to enjoy them and have all the stuff out. And we just don't have a lot of stuff. We really live a Spartan type lifestyle. We're more into, like you were saying before, some of the stuff that you would spend all this money on. I'm sitting here been thinking, if I had that much money, really what I would be doing is traveling and doing experiences and use a little bit of that money for my collection, almost what I'm doing with my money now. I'm not spending all my money on comics. I'm spending a little bit on it. I've got other things that I want to do and other things that interest me. And my wife is always like saying, it's all about experiences, not things. Things aren't important. People are, experiences with those people are what's important. So it would be difficult because I have an emotional attachment to my collection. My 12,000 comics I've collected off the rack. A small percentage has been only here recently in the last 2 years of me buying off of eBay or buying from something like that. Even some of these are still going to the LCS and buying, off the rack there. Very little have I gotten from back issues going to, like I said, I've only been to one con in my entire life. I bought some issues there. Other than that, everything I've gotten, from a gas station or, an LCS that was near me. So, but yeah, I don't think I would even hesitate if somebody needed something and said, hey, we could do this. If you sold all this, I'd be like, okay, let's sell it. Let's, if that's going to help somebody else. But that's the only thing I really have left is those comics from when I was a kid.
All right. Well, you heard it here first. In the event of a chimp mauling, you have all of our permission to sell your comic. All right, question number 4. I like this one a bunch. How to start reading comics. And I have an answer. I have an answer. Let's see if you agree.
Okay.
Go to your local goddamn library. Because here's the thing about libraries. Libraries make their bones, get their government funding based on how much foot traffic they have, meaning how many people take out stuff. So that's why they get the popular books. That's why they get the comic books. Believe it or not, if you haven't been to your local library in a number of years, manga is insane at local libraries because what happens? A high school kid takes out volumes 1, 2, and 3, and they're back in a day because they go through them in about a half an hour. So libraries have a lot of incentive to get people in the door. And so I live in Lewiston, nowhere, Maine. It's the only thing we're famous for is a shooting that happened 2 months ago. Before that, nobody knew about us. And my library is enormous and it has a huge comic book collection. So if you're thinking about how do I start reading comics, it's just reading comics. Pick a character that appeals to you, and then get everything with their name on it. If Spider-Man's your jam, go to your local library, grab every Spider-Man book. I don't even care if they're in order because guess what? Most of us don't read in order either. So if they only have volumes 1, 2, 7, and 9, get them, read them, have fun. And if you don't like them, go back, pick up Hulk. He's just as bad, I promise. All of Marvel, it's dreadful. But like then when you come around, you go to the DC section and like, you know, you mature a little bit. I'm kidding. Please don't hate me. But like, I believe that how to start reading comics is just read comics. It's kind of like going to the gym. How do I start going to the gym? Get your ass to the gym.
I would suggest what you suggested with a comic that doesn't have a lot of tie-ins. Like you were saying with Legion of Superheroes, it's insular so that you can get into those characters and get in without having to go over here and over here and over here to get this, to get the complete story. My suggestion would be to go backwards and pick up some older comics that don't have as many tie-ins where you can pick up, oh, I'm going to pick up Superman and I'm going to read Superman stories. That way there's not a lot of tie-ins up until you get to the 80s, and then you're going to start getting a little bit more tie-ins. But if you read the 70s stuff, you get to the 80s, okay, I'm ready to now start branching out into these others. And it's almost like it dips your toe in a little bit, as opposed to I feel now that if you pick up Spider-Man, you got to pick up 15 issues Spider-Man. I feel it's more difficult now to get into it. And I may be wrong. I may be just an old grognard and can't, get in with the hip stuff that's going on with comics now. But I have a difficult time getting into what they're giving me as far as stories. Travis?
Well, I was going to say, well, thanks, Richard. You just stole my line. There we go. Anyway, so I was going to say, go to your local comic book store. Most places there's a comic book store somewhere close by, within 10 miles. If not, if you go to if you don't have a comic book store, a lot of magazine racks in those areas do get some comics. I'm going to throw this out there. I think talk to people. I mean, really, again, comic books is not just I'm reading a comic book. It's an experience that you share with other people. So you're going to hear different things from different people. I mean, I didn't plan on this for this moment, but I brought Superman #1 for the newest Superman #1. Now they're on issue 8, right? However, you can still get this brand new. You can still get it. Still great book, great cover, everything very pretty. Wraparound cover. But it's a great story, and it's written by a great writer. And you can go right into this story without having any history of Superman, other than that he's a guy who flies in the air, who's got powers, and he goes against kryptonite. And if you've watched anything or heard anything, his nemesis is Lex Luthor, and Lex Luthor is a prominent character in the story. So you would be able to jump right into that story, and without any having to go back to 20, 30 years. And there's not a bunch of crossover stuff. I mean, sure, there is a crossover here in the storyline, but it's not primary to the storyline. You can keep reading it, skip the crossover, or read just the 2 Superman issues that were a part of the crossover and continue on. I think one of the coolest or one of the best things about some of the new comics that are coming out, so for me, I would say new comics. If you want to get something, it's going to be grab it. There's some stuff out there that's good. Talk to people, find out who the good writers are, find out what people are liking. For me, I really like Joshua Williamson. He's a great writer. And that Superman book's written by Joshua Williamson. That's why I picked it up. And as soon as I read it, I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And then it wasn't just because I like the guy's stuff and other things he's written. As soon as I read it, it was like, he took Superman in a direction I never expected. And it was refreshing. And, I often find that with different new characters. I mean, Spider-Boy is another one. He's a new character. He's brand new. You don't have to buy 1,000 comics just to understand who he is. And they're telling his origin story in the Spider-Boy book. And he's a new character. And he's tied to Spider-Man, but enough of what is going on in his own book is just his own book, and it's great.
I think you need to try different things too. I think let's try some Marvel, let's try some DC, let's try some horror, let's try some, war stories, let's try some Westerns, whatever it is. Let's try this writer, let's try this artist, let's find, and I would say get a bunch of different things. Read it and go, I don't know. Read the next one. I don't know. Read the next one. Ooh, I kind of like this. Now you found something you like. Now you're into it. And like Richard said, finding somebody else that has similar interests to you, or share that interest. Find something you like and give it to your buddies and say, hey, I like this. What do you think about it? May get them interested, and that's what you need, is that foil. I think that's one of the reasons we got on YouTube, is so that we would have this foil of talking with somebody that has similar interests that we have, that love this medium.
Well, and that's kind of how we all met too, right? I mean, we don't none of us live near each other right here, right now. I mean, I'm on the West Coast. You're on the East Coast. You're in the South. I mean,
we've covered the entire United States right there.
Exactly. Right.
Yeah. I am in the crawl space beneath Mon Common's living room. All right. So libraries, talk to people, stay away from events. All good advice. Question 5. I like this one, and I don't want to go first. Can you sell a comic book your friend gave you? Logistically, yeah, but I mean, yes, but I think morally is the question.
I think the wording is wrong. Would you sell a comic your friend gave you? Not can. Like you say, you're going by, oh, yes, you can.
I'm going to edit it. I'm going to edit it right now.
Would you sell?
So would you sell a comic book your friend gave you?
No, because they have a personal meaning to me. So here's what I've done. Someday somebody's going to get this collection. I always told my wife that if I pass away, you go to Jason at the LCS and you just come and here's an offer and he just buys the whole thing. But what people are going to get, or what Jason's going to get if he gets them, is some of these notes people have wrote to me of stuff that they've given to me. It's in that comic. I put it in there. So they're going to pull that. If they pull that comic out or they sell it to somebody else, at some point in time, somebody's actually going to pull that thing out and read it. And that's going to be in there. This guy got this from this. So me personally, no, I'm never going to sell something that Brandon gave to me, something that Big B gave to me. I'm not going to sell those. You think I'm going to sell that thing, that X-Men comic Ryan gave me with John Byrne's signature on it? Mm-mm. That's not gonna, somebody else will get it. I'm going to let it pass on to somebody else and somebody else will enjoy it. But am I going to sell it? No.
I think I'd have to defer to question 2. I mean, seriously, it really comes down to, but honestly, like, okay, so out of all the first 2 times I sold my collection, I kept a certain amount of comics, right? And those comics had meaning to me. Like I kept my whole run of Wildcats. I know that sounds silly, right? But it was there was a lot of meaning in that time for me in my life. I had gotten my Wildcats #2 was given to me from someone because I didn't get one when it came out. The LCS stiffed me. I actually dropped my LCS because of that and went to a different LCS because of that. I know that sounds just hilarious. As a 20-year-old, or 19-year-old, I was mad at, oh, you were supposed to make you sure I had one. And I left because I was so angry and never went back. And I've actually never entered that guy's store, and their store still exists. I mean, they only do cards now. They don't do comics, but they're such a bad feeling, but it was a comic book collection that I kept. The part of it that I always had with me. And yeah, things that people give me, like for Christmas this year, not this year, but last year, Kim's dad gave me a graded. So I like to collect sketches done by artists, and I always get those graded. So when I say I don't really like to keep things graded unless for me, that's pretty much the only thing I keep graded are sketched covers that are sketched by an artist. And so I gave that. That was something he gave to me, and I'll never get rid of that. Not till the end of time, not till I pass away and it goes to someone else, goes to my kids. My girls are kind of nerdy like me, so they kind of want to have the collection. So yeah, I mean, I don't think I'm going to ever give away the things people have given me. I mean, that magazine that I got this year is from Ryan, was so cool. I mean, I put the note in with the magazine, like you were saying about putting the notes in with stuff, right? I put the note in with that magazine because it's so cool.
So I'll say, I'll admit, I'm a little sentimental too. So I won a package from Mr. Aiken himself, where he sent me I won the John Byrne Superman collection. Here's the deal. I already owned it.
Right.
But I literally replaced the books that were in my collection with those, because even though they're identical, and if I shuffled them up, I wouldn't be able to tell which one is which, except for the one that has the burning building icon in the back, the thing he input. But aside from that, they're identical. But I know now that those books, when I read them again in the future, came from this particular place. So I mean, the sentimentality is real. I think you can in an emergency situation, and I don't think any friend that would get you a comic that means something to you, that they know you enough to get you that character, would begrudge you in an emergency medical situation that I sold it for money. I don't think your friend's going to be like, oh, well, she should have walked around with her torn up monkey face, man.
Would it bother you if you gave something to somebody else and they sold it?
If they sold it, so okay, like it depends on what they sold it for. If it's for heroin, yeah, I'm probably upset. But if I gave them something and they were like, don't get mad, but it was part of a trade that got me a Grail that really means something to me, I would no worries whatsoever. Yeah, no, I would actually think I own a piece of that. Like, hey, I'm a part of that X-Men 1 on your shelf now.
Right. And that was the thing. I was like, ooh, if I send this stuff to Ricky and he's got this full run of John Byrne, you know what? He could just and he's already got it. He can just pass it on to the next person.
That's true.
In a giveaway or something. I think I gave an AOK to someone, and I think I even put in the letter, I said, hey, if you already got these, this will make a great something to
pass
put
it
in.
on.
Yeah, just pass it on to the next person.
Okay, so this next one, I have to go first because I have very strong feelings about it. Is it okay?
My wife just laughed at you, Ricky. My wife, she snickered when you said I have very strong feelings. And I
have such strong feelings. Okay, is it okay to write yourself into a comic book? Now, I think this question came about because a cloud can't pass in the sky without someone blaming it on woke politics nowadays.
Right.
And so I think what they're asking is permission to not like someone who has insert their own personality or is writing a version of themselves. hey, Ricky started writing for Batman. Why is Batman suddenly 90 pounds overweight and really apathetic about Gotham's politics? Like, I mean, okay. Here's the deal. I don't know. I come from a literary background. My master's is in English. I love literature, and so comic books is a part of my love for reading in general. I love reading books. Damn it, I love reading classic books. I love reading new, top 10 best-selling smut. If there's a lady getting held by a guy with an open shirt and a pirate ship, I'm rock hard. I'm all about reading. So, in the annals of history, going back as far as the first caveman drawing a person on a wall, you are limited to creating based on your own personal experiences. And I hate that in 2023, I have to explain to fans of literature, comic books are literature, get over it, that when you create something, you are in fact limited to your own perspective. Even if you're writing as a different race or a different gender or a different age or a different era, you're still writing based on your understanding of that race, age, gender, and era. We only have our own perspectives. So if you hire a 22-year-old female to write a 70-year-old man, it is not only her perspective on a 70-year-old man, it's her perspective on 70-year-old men in general. It's a commentary on what she thinks about 70-year-old men. And so you're never going to be able to hire a rich billionaire white guy to write for Batman, just as you're not going to be able to hire a World War II veteran who survived on ice and has recently dealt with the resurrection of his dead sidekick. We're only limited to our experiences. So is it okay to write yourself into a comic book? Hell yeah, because that's the only way that you can write what you know. That's all you can do. So like, let me tell you, like, a person who would ask this question earnestly and say, like, fire that overweight Asian woman for writing for Tony Stark, or whatever your umbrage is. If you, dear sir, were to write for, the comment section is blowing up, I promise I'll get to you. You, dear sir, if you were to write for Spider-Man and he was a teenager again, and that's where your tenure of Spider-Man began, are you telling me you're honestly not going to pull from your own personal experiences of being bullied? Of course you are, when you're writing teenage Spider-Man, because that's what you experience and that's what bullying looks like to you, and you want to get some stuff off your chest. Same thing if you're a gay female who's been given a character who is white and straight forever. What do you think the chances are of you wanting to insert a little bit of representation, a little bit of characters that look like you, that maybe you're not rewriting Tony Stark, but maybe he has a secretary that, I don't know, has blue hair like you? Wouldn't you do it too? Is it okay? Not only do I think it's okay, I think it's necessary for the creation of art that people write honestly, authentically, and they have to write from their own perspective. The end of rant. Please chime in while I pull up some comments.
Well, since I posed this question, it was posed because I'd been watching. I've seen a lot of things, people talking about it on the YouTubes. And yes, I said the YouTubes. But and so it's interesting because there was a pretty store owner that was frustrated, that expressed this sentiment of, why are you writing yourself in the comic book? Why aren't you writing the character as the character's supposed to be? And I think I understood his sentiment, but I also don't agree with him 100%, because you can't. I agree with you 100% on that, Ricky. You have to be able to write from your experience, because if you don't write from your experience, then it's not a genuine piece of art. You're trying to write someone else's experience, but you're not. Do you know that? Did you research? What are you doing to build yourself an idea that you're coming from? And I mean, you look at people like I don't know, Gail Simone. She writes incredible women, but she also writes incredible men. I mean, she wrote a really great Punisher run that was pretty amazing. You look at, I mean, I was talking about Joshua Williamson, and his characterizations of the characters in Superman are amazing, but I can still feel the same stuff that he wrote in the horror stuff that he has written, because, you know, he loves to write horror books, and you can feel the writers' tenor, their taste, and who they are. And I think it's important. I think it's important to be true to a character that's however many years old, but you also have to make something new, or what's the point? I mean, we write the same Superman story 1,000 times over and over. Who's going to read it, right? But then on the other side of it, if you write something so new that it just totally destroys the market, who's going to read it? So you kind of have to, I think there's an honest balance. And I think you were talking about an honest balance when you were saying, like, what if Tony Stark had an assistant that had blue hair like this person? I mean, it's an honest balance. I mean, I think John Byrne did a great job. I think of that. I mean, adding, you know, with the twins in Alpha Flight, being gay and transgendered. I mean, that's I think those were an incredible, way before the time, characters in comics. I mean, and I think honestly, I think Marvel was really ahead of its time in a lot of those character creations in the 70s and 80s for that type of stuff.
I don't think John Byrne beat people over the head with it, though. I don't think it was the primary focus. A lot of those characters, I think there were universal themes that anybody could understand, regardless of where they were coming from. So I can see where people are a little maybe put back when it's too blatant. I guess it's sort of like, you know, how you can have a song and it could be about sex, but you go, oh, you know, younger, you have no idea. And then later on you go, that's what that song was about. That's what the intent was. I feel that a lot of this writing, you put it out there and it's a lot of interpretation, meaning you lose control over it once you put it out there, and people are going to interpret it any way they're going to want. You lose control over it. And so this person's going to say it's this, and this person's going to say it's that. I feel a lot of the writing now is just, it's sledgehammer. There's no nuance. There's no subtlety to it. It's sort of like in those comics that you're talking about with John Byrne and North Star, it was, is he gay? Is he not gay? Was it really, you know, you kind of thought about it in certain aspects and certain panels, but then it wasn't the primary thing. It wasn't all about that, as far as you cared about the character because of other things that were going on. And you didn't really, you kind of cared that was important, or you were interested in that, but it wasn't the primary focus. It wasn't the title of the issue. It was something that was in there, sort of like everyday life. It's, oh, these people are this, these people are that, but it's more about the human experience that we all share, that we all can relate to, that, ooh, love, hate, death, life, those kind of things, I feel are kind of lost in some of the stuff that people are doing. It's almost like they're putting all the politics right up front, and there's no subtlety, there's no nuance to what they're doing. It's nothing that you have to think on and figure out. They're beating you over the head with it, and you're like, okay, I heard you the first 5 times you said it. I don't have to hear it another 5 times.
It's hard. It's hard because it is what we're talking about. You know what I mean? Like it's kind of like, it's the tone of the country. It's the tone of the planet. This is kind of I don't know how to put it, but like, I mean, X-Men is perhaps the strongest comic book allegory for the other, whatever that other is. Another race, another sexuality, another state of being. I don't know. My phone's exploding with an Amber Alert. No joke. Jesus. How about that guy identifies with being found? No. So with X-Men being as popular as they are, I think it resonates with people, this idea of like the otherness of being alive, and other people not wanting you to be here. Because here's what I've noticed just personally on comic book YouTube. I hear the same. I hear two puppets. One puppet is telling me, make original gay characters and no one will get mad. Give them their own characters. Don't rewrite characters. Give them their own characters. And then Snowflake and Safe Space come out and they become laughing stocks of the internet, and everyone hates them and wants them to go away. And then they say, okay, well, you need to respect legacy characters. Okay, well, here's a legacy character, Alan Scott, that literally I've never met a single person on earth who gives a shit about Alan Scott. Never met him, because he only had his own series back in 1943. He since then he's been a second stringer to the JSA in a struggling book in DC Comics that JSA, except for Jeff Johns writing it, never really took off. So it's Puppet 1, make original characters. Puppet 2 over here saying, old classic characters, shouldn't be rewritten to be gay, even though we'll come back to that. It's the same guy with both puppets. It's the same dude holding up both puppets. And it's really frustrating because, like, okay, so if you want them to have their own gay characters and gay characters get written, why are you now pissed off? And then when they rewrite a legacy character that nobody gives a shit about, it's effectively like throwing a coat of paint on a old beater that nobody wants. And then they finally do something with that character and make him a little bit more interesting or add a layer to him that we didn't know about. And now that's forbidden too. It just seems like with the same guy holding both puppets, the idea is that what we really don't want is them. And at least, and I'm a straight dude. I've got some gay friends in my life. I don't know that struggle, but at least even to my own sheltered perspective, it seems like they're just being told in not so many words, like, hey, just don't be here. How about that? How about just not be around? And like, I don't know. I don't understand how some of these people can be fans of the X-Men. Like, I don't understand how your brain can rationalize, like, oh no, they're meant to be the other, but not the other that I'm uncomfortable with. Just the other that, is safe and wouldn't molest my kids. That's where my brain goes when they start talking. I don't know. Call me a dickhead.
Okay.
Thank you.
No, I mean, I totally, it's the point of view that was, my favorite part. I mean, someone just mentioned Stan Lee and the thing. Oh yeah, there it just popped up. One things that there was a recent clip that was sent out about Stan Lee talking about characters in comic books and calling them they're fictional characters. And I think other people have said this too. I mean, it's a fictional character. If it gets rewritten to be something different and you don't like it, it's a fictional character. I mean, is it life? Is it, I mean, I get it. I know I'm right now I'm sitting surrounded by comic boxes, right? I'm sitting in my little space that I've created with all my comic boxes. And I'm sitting here going, is comics really life? And it's like, no. And so for me, it's if you're going to do that with the character and all I care about is good writing. When it comes down to it, all I care about is good art. I want the whole thing to be something that's good and well done, and that's what I care about. That's
the Jerry Seinfeld argument. Is it funny? Then it's funny. If it's not funny, so if it's not a good story, who cares? It's not a good story anyway. What does it matter?
Yeah, I mean, it's really what comes down to it. If you write a character, so I'm going to say this. I was not at all. I was like really excited to find this character that could jump multiverses, America, right?
Chavez.
I picked up America Chavez. I picked up the first 4 issues of that run, and it was so disjointed, and it was written by the same person, and the art was I was like, what are you selling me? I mean, what are you trying to sell? I mean, it's not, I mean, again, I buy everything. I don't have, I mean, I have the Alan Scott, I have the variant cover for Alan Scott, the Virgin variant cover that foil right over here in this box. I have I buy everything. I don't have this thing where to me I have to have this battle with stuff. But eventually, when I read stuff, if it's not good, I stop buying. And if the art's terrible, if it's just one issue, I'm not worried about it. But if it continues to be terrible in like the second issue, I'm not. I again see this is for me the idea of writing yourself into a comic book. I go back to I'm gonna pull some 50s sci-fi out. I think of Heinlein, who wrote himself into every book that he wrote, right? But he was a caricature of himself in the books, and that's what I think of when someone says that terminology. I mean, but putting out your point of view is going to happen no matter what you do. If you can do it really well, and it's a compelling story, then I want to read it. I mean, I'm gonna Ricky, I'm gonna pump you up a little bit. That first chapter of your book is freaking awesome.
Aw, shucks.
I mean, it just I was caught. You had the right kind of grab, and it just pulled me right in. If I had more time, I would have probably finished the book already. But it grabbed me, pulled me in. I was sucked in. But that's good storytelling, and that's important.
All I heard was that I sucked you off.
Ricky, do you feel that the writing quality now, do you have a period of time that you feel like the writing quality of your breadth of reading,
Sure.
did you feel the writing quality was at its best? And do you think it's at its best now? Or at what point in time do you think the writing quality was at its best? From a true literary standpoint, you're like, hey, this is really good stuff.
So honestly, it's kind of like it's that line from Scott Pilgrim where the girl goes, "Oh, what video game do you like?" And he's like, "That's such a big question." It depends on the character. I think it shifts via character. I think you would probably say Spider-Man's favorite writing is probably the 70s.
Mm-hmm.
So then I would say Superman's best writing. I cried like a baby. I don't cry during comic books. I'm a man with a penis. I don't have feelings. I stuff those feelings down so deep they become fucking polyps. But I cried like a baby when I read that it was an Infinite Crisis tie-in book of Superman's where everything is just going to shit and the city's falling apart and all the text bubble, the entire book, the text bubbles are the yellow text of writing, and it's Lois Lane talking about just like what he's doing to help people, and how I don't know, like Superman, and this is something that I know Richard's going to agree with. Superman is the best of us. He's not the best superhero. I mean, that's obviously he is, but he's the best of us. He proves that absolute power does not corrupt. And so I love that character. And so seeing the humanity of him, this man that could literally dissolve our atmosphere by snapping his fingers if he saw us unfit for oxygen, doesn't. He sacrifices every moment of his life to be the best version of us. And so yeah, exactly, Richard. Superman is what we can be. And so like for Superman, it's individual issues. Like the Superman Red and Blue series was amazing. Wonder Woman, it's pretty much all trash. X-Men, you'd probably say the Claremont run, right?
Right, but I guess I'm thinking of eras where across the board you had good writers. So you're saying this is the pinnacle of this character, and then you have secondary and third and tertiary, and then here's the pinnacle era for this. I know what you mean because I have pinnacle eras for all mine.
And I bet if you stitched them all together and you made a quilt, it would be like, okay, Spider-Man's get the 70s, 80s, probably Batman, 90s, No one. It was all garbage. Definitely not Spawn. 2000s, probably like I would die on the hill and say like the Brad Meltzer run for Justice League was fantastic. That was something that I would do. 2010s, probably DC again. I don't know. I'm just
Do you feel that there are parallel? You said 90s garbage. Do you feel that there's parallels now to the 90s? Whether it's the market, whether it's the writing, whether it's the marketing, do you feel like there's parallel? Because I feel like there is. I feel like there's a lot of parallels to the 90s as there are today.
I
as well.
agree with Cretan. I agree 100%. Like the 90s was, I mean, I'm making fun of the 90s because the 90s was generally shitty for superheroes, but for non-superheroes, the 90s was fantastic. I mean, Grendel came out in the 90s, for crying out loud. There's someone in the 80s who's pissed off that I didn't mention the Turtles for their inception. But yeah, no, it is. You're absolutely right. It is a little all over the place. Yeah, it's hard to nail down like a single era where like the writing was the best. I mean, Neil Gaiman in the 80s, Alan Moore in the 80s. Is the 80s the golden age? Are we all wrong?
Who are the writers now? Who are you like? Ooh, I can't
right
wait
now. Now, I have a big old mega chub for Tom King. I think I think I don't know why people don't like Tom King. I really like Tom King's writing. Every time Tom King comes up, Snyder. Every time Snyder and Capullo team up, that's always a fun time. Except for their Justice League run, that's pretty bad. I'm reading it right now, and I'm not. I don't. Oh, well, like so. What are you reading? Anything right now? I'll put that back on you. Are you reading anything right now that like that like tickles your fancy enough to say like I would call this book from the modern age like quality?
Oh well, I mean, of course. Well, see, like you, there are certain time periods when I think characters were the best. And like you said, I think the 70s was the best for Spider-Man. I think, of course, for the Fantastic Four, it's the Lee Kirby. That's the pinnacle. And then secondary would be John Byrne's run on the Fantastic Four. For Iron Man, when was that? That was in the 80s. That was in
80s.
early 80s. For me, since I'm an Iron Man fan, I think the David Michelini, Bob Layton, John Romita Jr. period of time when they were on that run, it was perfect. Captain America, it's Mark Waid. I mean, not Mark Waid, but Mark Grunwald when he was on that. Who's your favorite Superman writer? I like Roger Stern. Do you like Roger Stern writing Superman? Or do you think it's too vanilla and it's not muddy enough? It's not.
See, I like the Silver Age. I'm a big Silver Age Superman fan. So like Kurt Swan and Otto Binder is just like that's when Superman was, I don't know, like blue skies, big smiles. Like the reason why I've never bought a Superman statue, and if anyone anywhere of any importance is ever listening to this, hear me now. The reason why I've never bought a Superman statue, and I would buy a $2,000 Superman statue if you just made the sumbitch smile. Superman does not scowl to me. That's not him. Very rarely. It's the exception to the rule where he scowls in a comic book. 90% of the time he's smiling and posing for pictures. He's one of the only superheroes that after he saves the day, he's always smiling. And so like all these statues, like look up any statue of Superman from like Prime One Studios or whatever, and he's always just,
you need a Christopher Reeve smiling statue of Superman.
They made a Christopher Reeve statue and he's smirking. He's not even smiling.
Smirking. He's not smiling. You're right. But if he'd been smiling, you would have purchased it.
I would have bought it. Okay. We're going to do a quick question and then we're going to end all of my videos of discussing comics with disgusting people. We're going to end it the same way with the same question. You might have heard it last time. Last question of the night. This is a simple one. Give me a couple sentences. Question 7. What is the worst comic book movie of all time?
Wow, I'm drawing
there's a lot of deep thought on camera right now. It's big stuff.
I know there's an answer to this, and I just can't think of it at the moment.
It used to be Superman 4.
Used to be. That was a bad one. That was a bad one.
What's a
That's
bad
the one where
movie?
he had brick building vision. He fixed a wall by looking at it.
He's Superman.
That's some Silver Age shit.
I would go ahead as
My
far as
comics has that thing about ruining the Mandarin in Iron Man 3.
Yeah, he's like, where are his giant buck teeth? Like, where's it? Like, he wanted a really offensive Captain American Mandarin.
Superman Quest for Peace.
Yeah.
Question for peace.
Question for peace. I'm gonna have to say though, I'm going to say that the worst comic book movie of all time, in my personal opinion, is always going to be, well, I have to say it. It's Thor: Love and Thunder.
Still haven't seen it.
Well,
there's no reason to.
There's no reason to, because nothing happens in the movie. We get nothing. You get the beginning, and we've already had Thor as someone who's grown and had character development. At the end, we have Thor who is not changed. He's unchanged. In fact, he's regressed back to Thor. I don't know. Thor in the beginning, in the middle of the fat Thor.
Dad bod Thor?
Yeah, dad bod Thor. And it's just personality-wise, that's who he is. And it's just like, it's terrible. It's just disgusting. It's just not, it's like there were so many opportunities in that movie to make something that was art. And all they did was, I hate to say it was not even fan service. It was like, I just don't care.
You know why
that's what I feel like.
Have you heard how they created that? I can't think of the director's name, but they would say
Taika Waititi.
Yeah, they would come in on set and they would go, "Listen, this is what we're going to do, and we're going to do this, and it'd be neat to do this. So I want you to do this." And they're like, "Okay, that's not what we. Yeah, it'll be neat." And every day it was just a foobar every day of like, we don't know what we're doing, why we're doing it, we're just throwing stuff together. And that's kind of what you got from that movie, is that this is just a hodgepodge of scenes and, ooh, it would be cool if this happened. Let's do it. Okay. And they had great actors in there that they did not, like you said, develop. You had no feeling for any of the characters that are in there. And the villain could have been a great villain that you could have had some empathy toward. That's one thing that you need to have with a villain, is you got to have some empathy. You kind of understand why he's doing what he's doing. But I don't know which one it is for me. I'm going to have to really think on that, because the ones that's going to be the worst one for me is the one that makes me angry as I'm watching it, and I'm just getting more and more ticked off, and I seem to forget anger. I kind of push it out of my head. So after I get angry and then I go, I've never seen this movie before. I don't remember being so, but there was a movie, it's a superhero movie, and I remember watching it. And as I watched it, I got more and more angry as I watched the movie. And I'm gonna have to remember which one it is, and then I can get back with you, Ricky.
Okay, you think about it. I think it's a tie, and I don't want you to think I hate women. I don't. I love women. My mother's a woman. But it's Elektra and Catwoman.
Oh,
if we're straddling the fence between female-led company movies, for Marvel, it's Elektra, and for DC, it's Catwoman. They went in their own directions for the characters and how they saw them. And then I don't know who they were appealing to. I don't know who had a good time. Catwoman was just, Jesus wept. I would.
Did it make you angry?
Yeah, son of the mask. God damn you. God damn you for making me star that comment so that other people have to endure that. That is horrid. Son of the Mask. That had a rapping and Jamie Kennedy rapping.
Huh? Yes,
Christ.
right. Oh my gosh. Totally forgotten, man. That I had purged that from my memory and now it's back. Thank you.
See?
I think that's a definitive answer.
Yeah. Son of the Mask.
Son of the Mask is actually an abortion.
Brie Larson.
What this?
Captain Marvel.
Yeah, that one. My wife,
should-
my wife always comes up and goes, "Oh, I'll tell you which one made you angry." And she's saying the Captain Marvel movie made me angry. She said you were
You didn't
watching
like
it.
it.
And you were like, yeah, I didn't like it, but I've purged most of that from my memory. I can't even hardly remember it. I remember it being in between. Do you remember anything in particular I said that, or you just remember me saying, yeah, I just didn't like it?
He was just shouting out loud, "No wife of mine," over and over again.
Like not liking that at all. So much to the point to where anytime you would see her after that movie, you would get.
Oh yeah.
He saw her on the street and he whipped a Dunkachino at her.
I think because it was, I think I knew at that point that, you can only have a good run for so long. As we can say with Star Trek, The Next Generation's the best of both worlds. At some point in time, I mean, all good things come to an end. And I kind of knew that things were coming to an end, that you can't be on this high forever, that you're going to, you can party all night long, but got that next morning that you're going to have to deal with. And I think that's what the Marvel Cinematic Universe is dealing with, is they thought that they could just pump out anything. And hey, we can just put anything out there and people are going to like it. And we're just going to keep feeding it to them because they want it. And I knew at that point that I was like, ooh, we got one more good movie and it's going to be all downhill from here. I'm not saying that you can't right the ship at some point in time. But yeah, I kind of knew that I didn't like that one. I thought it was one of those, now I'm remembering, I felt like I was starting to learn a lot about AI, and I could tell that things were checking off boxes. We will insert joke here, check. Music here, check. Funny animal here, check. And we're just checking off boxes, and they were using a formula and the same old formula, the same old thing over and over. And I knew it's like, this is kind of what we're going to be dealing with from this point on, is a formula checklist, which I deal with in education. They do all the analytics and you go, if you do this, 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 and this, they will learn. And I'm like, no, it's not how it works. You just don't click the buttons and put everybody in the box and then they all come out the same way. It's just not going to. A factory mode isn't going to work on this. And that's, I kind of knew it was. So yes, she was right. That was making me angry as I was watching it. And I think I didn't want to talk about it afterwards either. I was like, I don't even want to talk about that movie.
All right. Last question. I want to end all of my videos this way. I like this question. So first, Mr. Aiken, what are you reading? How are you reading it?
Oh, this was what I read last night because I got 2 long boxes of these and you suggested this. So I don't have them all in order. This is the oldest. This is Legion of Superheroes 263. And then the next one I read was 272. I know nothing about these characters, but I'm kind of getting an idea about them because I know nothing about the Legion of Superheroes. Wildfire seems to have an attitude, a chip on his shoulder. Don't know why yet.
Wildfire is literally sentient energy that lives in a suit. It's so
and
cool.
I got that idea that that's what he is. And the other thing I did, because I'm making a video, I said, you know what? I'm going to figure out the very first comic I read, and I'm going to go from there. And I think I was talking about that earlier about, hey, I'm going to read all the books in 1976. April 1976 is when I started reading comics. And so I'm reading all the comics from January to April 1976 that came out. Very first comic. I'm reading a bunch. I've read this one, Fantastic Four. This one, read this one, read this one. And then I got to this one. Who do you think did this cover right here? Which I was shocked.
It's not.
So like anybody,
Byrne?
a famous artist? Any ideas?
Oh
I'm bad with artists.
no,
Well, see,
it looks familiar, but is it? It's not. It's not John Byrne, is it? No, it's not
no,
John Byrne. It's. Is it?
that's the thing. I don't think you'll ever guess.
Okay.
I mean, people can look it up. That's Jack Kirby and Joe Sinnott.
Oh, is that Jack Kirby and Joe Sinnott?
You're right. You're thinking that's really Jack Kirby.
I
Jack
couldn't.
Kirby
I couldn't
did that?
think through that. It couldn't go. I thought he did nothing from Marvel beyond at a
Oh
certain
no,
point. In time.
he was still doing some things. So I'm reading those things. I just got through reading this. This was in 1976. These are the first comics I ever read, and I still may have them in my collection. That means somehow they eluded the scissors, and I didn't cut the pictures out of them. I think the reason I didn't cut the pictures out of this one because it was Herb Trimpe art, and there were no full figured people in there. The artwork was I didn't like it as much as a kid, so I didn't cut it out. If it was a Jack Kirby comic book, that sucker would have been cut into absolute pieces. So I'm starting from the beginning. I'm reading stuff from 1976, looking at what Marvel put out at that time, and from January to April of 1976. Of course, I'm reading it physical copy. I think we went through that little idea before about me liking the physical copies. I've tried to read online. I can't do it. It just doesn't have the same oomph for me.
Travis,
Oh, and
what
I
are you
got-
reading? How you reading it?
Okay, so I read everything. I like physical copies too. So we've already seen the Superman. I'm reading Transformers. It's awesome. It's really interesting. It's also something my daughter and I are reading together. She's reading it with me. I'm reading G.I. Joe. And I'm reading G.I. Joe as a newcomer to G.I. Joe. Never read any G.I. Joe prior to this. And like my best friend, it's one of his favorite comic books. And he never said anything. He's like, I'm like, why didn't you say anything? He's like, I don't know. And he's like, oh, I always said it was really great. I have been reading Amazing Spider-Man for 15 years, almost 20 years now. So Amazing Spider-Man. And a new title I picked up, Original X-Men. It's a kind of a multiversal crossover thing, but this is a variant cover. But that's I'm reading. That's my only X-Men book right now. I'm not even reading any of the other X titles. Maybe Wolverine. And then
is that a multiversal thing? Because I picked that up too. I didn't pick up that copy of it, but I've got it on the pile here.
It's an interesting. So it ties into Bendis's story from back in the day, from when he wrote the new X-Men into the future or into the modern era. And then it's but generally speaking, it's a multiversal storyline where they're going to cross universes. It's almost like similar to what I know that so X-Man, Nate Gray, he was kind of this multiversal thing. Warren Ellis, when he wrote him, by the way, 90s writer, superhero guy, Warren Ellis, he was a really good writer in the 90s. I was going to call that out earlier and I didn't get a chance. I know he's not favored right now, but really good writer then. So, it's tied back to that same idea, but it's more related to the Phoenix power. And so there's some really interesting ties, and she brings back all their memories from the future so that they can go and do things to help this other universe. And so I read the first issue. It looks interesting. Good art. Good, kind of the storyline's good. It's not just some, it doesn't give you all the answers in the beginning. So you're really kind of, oh, hey, I want to see what happens next.
Right. And they're planning on this being a continuing series, or is this?
I don't know. That's the thing.
Okay.
I didn't say miniseries, so maybe a maxi, maybe 12 issues. Who knows? I mean, but the character.
Oh shit!
Oh, you did that, Ricky.
I meant to put you down to a small face so we could all see each other again, and I was like, "Get out!"
I just have one more thing though.
Oh sure, yeah.
Alpha Core.
Let me make you big.
Okay, so Alpha Core, new book from the Rippaverse. As if those of you who've watched any of my videos, you know that I follow the Rippaverse. It's a great book. Chuck Dixon's story is excellent. I did have a couple problems, but I'm going to go over my problems on on a review. I'm going to do a review for it. So, but it's a good book. It's enjoyable story. It's great start to finish. And even though they end the story as in the title, not the end of the story, but it's a cohesive story. It leaves itself open for more story. So it's really good.
I love Chuck Dixon on his Nightwing run. I like that.
Yeah.
I like that Nightwing run he did.
Yeah, I agree. One of the best.
Ricky, what you reading?
It's all physical copies. I'm still finishing up my book. My grandmother asks me to tell you she's sorry. And then I'm reading Conan by Mark Waid. And then I'm reading the last chunk of everything on my comic book reading order that leads into Dark Knight's Death Metal. There's a huge chunk of books between Dark Knight's Metal and Dark Knight's Death Metal, where it's like the 2020 to 2021 Justice League. You bounce around to like the Batman books, the Superman books, all leading up to them killing spoiler alert, killing the Batman Who Laughs. It's pretty bad. It's pretty bad. I'm not having a good time.
Is it as bad as the death of Superman? Is it that bad?
I'm not gonna lie. Like I'm a DC stan through and through, but like this run of Justice League written by Snyder and Capullo, and Tinian's also like a co-writer. It's trash. It's a story of MacGuffins. At any point in time, there is every issue, every arc, all of the story is there's a MacGuffin we're chasing. There's a MacGuffin we just lost. People become MacGuffins. Hot Girl's a MacGuffin. Her wings are a MacGuffin. Lex Luthor becomes a MacGuffin himself. It's nonsense. It's not fun. The characters like barely shine through this absolute curtain of shit. I'm just not having a good time. And like, I want it to be over so desperately.
I hate stories that are like that you're like, I'm invested this much in it. I'm going to push through. I want to push through. Do you feel that later on that makes you hate it even more?
What makes me hate it even more is that like, this is all to answer one of the biggest mysteries in the DC Comics universe that's ever existed. So for those of you who don't know, Jack Kirby had a falling out with Marvel Comics, and he was effectively hired by DC, and they told him like, you can do whatever you wanted to do with Thor. So when he was writing Thor, when he was drawing for Thor, he wanted Thor to be weird. These are gods that are millions of years old. He wants them to be strange and they have a weird culture, and he wanted it to be wacky. And, Lee and everybody else was like, no, you can't. So when he went to DC, they were like, what ideas do you have? And he's like, well, I'm going to make a new Thor and I'm going to call it the New Gods. And so he made the mythos out of what he wanted Thor to be. So if you ever had an idea of like, how weird was Thor ever going to be? It's what the New Gods turned into, and the New Gods are insane. And so at the edge of the DC's universe, in any multiverse you go to, Earth 1, Earth 2, it doesn't matter. If you go to the end of the universe, there's an end to the universe. There's a giant wall of stone creatures that are frozen in place with horror because they saw what was beyond the wall and then were punished by reality and stuck into the wall that they tried to circumvent. The story between Dark Knight's Metal and Dark Knight's Death Metal is the story of Perpetua, the god that lived beyond the wall. And I know what I'm telling you sounds really interesting, but trust me, it sucks so hard. It's like a runaway teen with no other way to make money. It's the source wall. Beyond it is a god named Perpetua, and she has this big boner for human beings in their like prime forms. She calls them apex humans, and they look like they kind of look like people who like did the January 6th riot. They're like super white. And so that's her idea of perfect humans. And so she likes spending time with them, but she gets bored. So she deletes them and makes them again and makes them again. And so Perpetua, get it? Perpetua, you're smart. Perpetua is the reason why the DC Universe's machine is a constant state of reboot. She's this god that set this machine in motion. Wow, that sounds like it answers a bunch of questions. Nope, sucks dick. So they
You say that like that's a bad thing.
Oh, no, not that. No, it's all teeth and she has braces. It's awful. It's awful. So Perpetua, so she lives behind the wall, and the whole story of Dark Knight's metal and is the wall breaking. And then between Dark Knight's metal and Dark Knight's death metal is this god running around trying to get her power back so she can just snap and reboot the universe in her image and go back to the way it used to be back when, I don't know, she didn't suck as a villain. And so that's them defeating her. But once they defeat her, apparently this was all part of the Batman Who Laughs' grand master plan. And then that's when Dark Knight's death metal comes in, which I haven't read yet. But it's just MacGuffins. She has 3 children, one of which is the Anti-Monitor. Oh, we got to find her 3 children. We got to convert them to our side. Oh, Hot Girl's wings are magic now, and that's the only thing that can hurt Perpetua. Christ almighty. It's every issue's a slog. Every issue, and it's beautiful. It's beautiful. It's Jimenez art. It is some of the best art, but like it's also overwritten. Like you'll turn the page and invariably any issue in this run, you'll turn the page and you will be reading for legit like 15 minutes. It's just walls of just like, and then Perpetua pulled out her saggy breasts and they were like a balloon that had been left out after a party and fallen behind a shelf. Like you pull it out and it's just like an inflated condom. And she's gross. Perpetua's gross. The story's gross. I'm sorry I ranted for so long, but it just like it's sucking the life out of me to finish. But I spent money, and I have 2 short boxes, and you can literally they're all in order. You can read them from end to end. It's the whole story. And so I'm halfway through the second box, and it's almost intolerable.
When you decide to read Future State, just give me a call, and I'll just send you a short box with all of Future State in it.
Oh, you have it all?
Yeah, I have it all.
Wow. Okay, so that's what I do. I get short boxes and I stuff them and I in a reading order.
And it was and I read it as it came out. And when you're talking about the slog, I read Dark Knight's Metal, but I didn't read everything before it. And then I didn't read anything after it, and then I read Dark Knight's Death Metal. I just skipped the whole middle part. And just kind of went back and skimmed here and there to grab some stuff because it looked terrible slogging wise, but it was Snyder and Capullo, so I got to read it. It's their art, right? And that story.
No, it's.
When you get to the actual Dark Knight's Death Metal, the story is not. I can't say that it's not bad, but it's not.
See, I liked
Metal.
I liked Dark Knight's Metal because like it had one, it was interesting. But 2, it had this like humanity to it, this like positive message about like, because the whole purpose of Dark Knight's Metal is, so there's the multiverse, which we all know about, in every comic book universe has it, but there's also the dark multiverse, which is in our universe up here, everything kind of supports life, everything works out in the end, kind of. But in the dark multiverse, like everything always just gets worse. The bad guy historically always gets away with it. The good guy winning is a, historical inaccuracy. And so they just have the worst universe to live in. But then all of those villains get together from the dark multiverse and say, like, we want to live in the universe that's good. We want good things to happen to us because we're all tragic characters. So they come to take it. And it's pretty sweet. But it ends on this like positive note. And I felt something. It was really good. But this new series, sweet, merciful Jesus, you read this and tell me there's a God that loves us. Look me in the eyes and tell me that we're destined for heaven when that book comes out. Anyway, I love everybody that watched. If you watch this in the future, if it's pre-recorded, great. please sub up everybody here. I mean, everybody here is awesome, especially me. I'm fantastic. They're nice. They're nice enough, but they they deserve your time.
You're fantastic, Ricky. I subbed you.
Oh, see, look at that. That's evidence.
I didn't do it 4 or 5 times, but I've done it at least once.
Inside joke, folks. Mon Comics, I don't want you to go. Sleeky, thank you all.
Well, then
thank
you can message me, Brandon. If you don't want us to go, just message us.
Yeah.
Okay. Love you. Bye. Catch you next time.